I'm going to have to skip a few things because I get into all this stuff. But this one I really want to talk to you about. And I write about this in my second book, Infectious, and I have these conversations with clients. This is the hardest thing to talk about. It relates to that first conversation when Reverend Mona called me a doormat. These are, in my mind, 5 sources of personal power. This model was created with a psychologist from Miami, Dr. Margarita Guri. I realized after my conversation in the Arizona desert where somebody called me out that there are real sources of power that we either use well or don't use well. And I realized that the person I'm engaging with has the same sources of power. And they're either clicked into those or not. I want to talk about position power for a moment because that one really gets played out in very intense ways. And we all have stories about position power. My dad was in the German Foreign Service, so from the ages of 10 through 14, we lived in Ankara, Turkey. My parents were not very religious, I knew that, but once a month, there was a Protestant minister who came from Istanbul to Ankara to do a Protestant service. And everybody went, including my family. And if this was the service right now, and I was the minister, the ambassador would sit in the front row, the cultural attaché would be in the second or third row, there was a chancellor that sat in the 10th row, and we sat behind the chancellor. So you didn't have to tell me that we were not very important. I got that really fast. On top of it, I remember when my mother would engage with people who sat in the front rows, and she had no awareness of this, she would almost bow to them as if she was their servant. It was very subtle, and she would lower her voice. So I got the story that this is how you relate to people with more position. Many years later now, I coach very powerful people, and obviously I can't show up as the little boy from Turkey anymore if I want to be successful. Now let me fast forward to, I remember one of the most powerful men I've ever coached is a guy named Bob. He's a CEO of a $5 billion company. And he just become CEO for 6 months, and I was at the headquarters in Chicago, and I'm walking down the hallway, and Bob said to me, "Can I talk to you for a moment?" I said, "Sure." And we went to a little private room. And he looked at me, he said, "Nobody talks to me anymore." And he said it sort of tongue-in-cheek. And he just walked into a room where people were taking a training class, and he was trying to schmooze and be nice and ask them questions, and people really didn't answer him. And he was a very affable guy, and it freaked him out. And I said, "Bob, what do you think that's about?" He said, "They're scared of me because I'm the CEO." I think, yeah, that's probably true. Now this is the part that really gets me. Bob has 11 people that report to him. That's his executive team. These are very powerful people. Some of them manage $2 or $3 billion portfolios. And in my opinion, they all still show up like the little boy from Turkey around Bob. They're afraid to really speak up. They don't own their voice because they haven't figured that one out. So what I'm inviting you to do, and this relates to my own journey when I was told I had to stop being a doormat, and the work I do with very powerful people, is how do you show up around a stakeholder who has more position power than you, who has the power to hire you, because they may have more position power, but as the CEO of your business, you have your own position power. It's different from their position power, but most of us tend to abdicate it, or we overcompensate in ways that are not helpful either. So just contemplate that one. I wish I could walk you through all of them, but that's the big one that really gets played out. Let me just talk about one more, which is the